The captive in the cargo bay Jackson Reed walked alone through the old junkyard on planet Myrthos 9. It was silent, except for the wind blowing across metal scraps and broken ships. He had just bought a small freighter ship at a cheap price. No, one else had wanted it. The seller told him, "Engines barely work. Don't expect treasure inside." But Jackson liked fixing things. And this ship, something about it felt different. He entered through the rusted side door. The inside was dark, dusty, and smelled like oil and old fuel. Jackson turned on his wrist light and started walking through the narrow hallway. Pipes hissed and floor. Panels creaked under his boots. Suddenly a sound stopped him, a soft, weak breathing. He followed it, confused. "Is someone here?" he asked. No reply. Then he reached the cargo bay and froze. There, in the back corner, stood a large metal cage. It was old, scratched, and locked with heavy chains. Inside the cage was a woman, not human. She sat on the floor, her legs pulled to her chest. Her skin was smooth but pale blue. Her eyes glowed faintly, violet and sad. Her long silver hair was tangled, and her clothes were torn and dirty. She looked up slowly when she heard him. "Please," she whispered. "Don't sell me. My body is strong, human. I'll give you strong children." Jackson took a step back, shocked. "What the hell? Who are you?" She didn't answer. Right away. She just looked at him, almost afraid. Her voice shook, but she spoke again. "I was built for war, but they used me for breeding. You bought the ship. That means you own me now." Jackson stared at her. He felt anger rise in his chest, not at her, but at whoever had locked her in here. "I don't own people," he said sharply, "especially not women kept in cages." She blinked, confused. "Then, why are you here?" "To fix this ship, not to keep slaves." Her hands trembled. Her face showed surprise. No one had said that to her before. No one had cared. Jackson pulled out a tool from his belt and walked over to the cage. "I'm getting you out." She backed away, unsure if it was a trick. "I don't hurt people," he said calmly. "What's your name?" She hesitated. "Arvina." "Okay, Arvina, let's get you out of here." He worked fast, using a plasma cutter to break the chains and a power tool to unlock the door. As it opened, she didn't move. She just stared at the open door. "You're free," he said. She crawled, out slowly, her legs shaking. It was clear she hadn't walked in a long time. He took off his jacket and gave it to her. She looked at it like it was gold. "I'm not cold," she said. "It's not about that," Jackson replied. "It's about dignity." She held the jacket tight and looked at him with wide eyes. "You're different." Jackson helped her stand, though she was taller and stronger looking than him. "Let's get you cleaned up and checked. You've been in here too long." As they walked back through the hallway, Arvina paused near a metal panel. "There's a transmitter here," she whispered. "Someone may have tracked me." Jackson frowned. "You think someone's coming?" She nodded slowly. "They won't let me go. Not easily." "Then we better move fast." Back at his living quarters inside the ship, Jackson gave her water and a protein bar. She ate carefully, like she hadn't had real food in weeks. Her hands were still shaking. "Who locked you up?" Jackson asked. She looked away. "The lab forges. They create beings like me. They sold me. I was a product." Jackson clenched his fists. "You're not a product. You're a person." No one had ever said that to her before. That night, while she rested, Jackson sat in the pilot seat and looked out the ship window. Stars blinked in the distance. His mind was racing. Who were these lab forges? Why did they create people like Arvina? And what did they want from her? He didn't know yet. But one thing was clear. Jackson hadn't just bought an old ship today. He had unlocked a secret. And now, that secret was awake. She was born for war, but trained for submission. Arvina sat on the edge of the small bed, holding the human's jacket around her like armor. Her glowing violet eyes studied every part of the small room. It was plain. No chains, no guards, no cold metal floor. Just silence. Freedom felt strange. Jackson brought in a tray of warm food and set it near her without a word. He had learned she didn't like loud movements. He could see it in her flinch, small, but always there. "You don't have to be scared," he said, gently. "This ship is yours now, too." Arvina looked up at him. "That is difficult to believe." Jackson sat across from her. "Try." She took a small bite. Her body was thin, but underneath, he could see strong muscles, more like a soldier than a prisoner. "Why didn't you leave me in the cage?" she asked after a pause. "Because you're not an animal," Jackson said simply. "What they did to you was wrong." Arvina looked away. "They said I was a weapon, born in tanks, raised in silence, trained for war, but when the war ended, they didn't need weapons anymore. So they made us into something else." Jackson didn't speak. He just listened. "They said we were too valuable to waste. Strong bones, fast healing, perfect genetics. So they sold us to rich planets, went to breed." Her hands shook as she held the cup of water. "I was sent to 3 buyers before this ship. The last one didn't want me, called me too proud. So he locked me in that cage and flew away." Jackson's jaw tightened. "That's evil." Arvina blinked. "You say that like it's simple." "It is simple," he replied. "You're not a tool, not something to use." She was silent for a moment. Then she said something soft. "You speak like people in old stories, gentle, honorable." He smiled. "That's a first." Arvina suddenly touched her chest. Her fingers glowed faintly. "Do you want to test my strength?" she asked in a calm voice. "Do you want children like the others did?" Jackson leaned forward, serious. "No, and you never have to offer that again. You don't owe me anything, Arvina." She looked stunned. "Then why are you still helping me?" "Because I'm human," he said. "And that still means something to me." She lowered her head. "I don't know what to do if I'm not being used." "Then we'll figure it out. Together." The next day, Jackson connected a medical scanner to her wrist. He wanted to know more. What made her body so different? The results shocked him. Her bones were stronger than steel. Her muscles reacted faster than any soldier's. Her immune system was flawless. She was part science, part miracle. "Your blood," he whispered. "It can heal almost anything." "They bred us to survive any war," she replied. "But they never taught us how to live." Jackson turned off the scanner. "You're more human than most people I've met." Before she could respond, the ship's warning light blinked red. Incoming signal. Unknown source. Locked on. Jackson's stomach turned. He rushed to the control deck. No one's supposed to know this ship even works yet. Arvina followed, silently. Her eyes locked on the signal pattern. "It's them," she said coldly. "The lab forges. How did they find us? There was a tracker in the cage, I warned you." Jackson ran a hand through his hair. "Damn it." "They'll come for me," she said, "and they won't stop. Then we fight." Arvina shook her head. "You can't win against them. They don't care about rules. They only care about results." Jackson looked at her, then opened a hidden panel. Inside was a small locked case. He took out an old plasma pistol and tossed it to her. "I don't care who they are," he said. "I don't let monsters take people I care about." She looked at the weapon, her hand steady. "You'd risk your life for me?" "Yes." Arvina stared at him, something deep changing in her eyes. "Then I'll fight with you." As the warning alarm echoed through the ship, they stood side by side. One human, one creation of war. Not slave and owner, not weapon and master, just 2 souls who refused to be broken. A hidden army in her veins. The stars outside the ship flickered like silent watchers, but inside the freighter, tension filled the air like smoke. Jackson worked quickly, powering up the old defense systems. Sparks flew as wires hissed and screens lit up for the first time in years. Arvina stood behind him, still and quiet, but something was different in her now, her body alert, her mind sharper. It was like a part of her had awakened. She wasn't just scared anymore, she was preparing. Jackson looked back at her. "If they get close, we won't have much time." Arvina nodded slowly. "I can feel them. They're not far now. One ship. Maybe two." "You can feel them?" he asked. "My blood is tuned to the lab forge's frequencies. They created us that way. To hear them. To sense their commands." Jackson paused. "What else can you do?" Arvina took a breath, stepped forward, and held out her hand. A faint light pulsed under her skin. Veins shimmered like glowing rivers. Her eyes turned from soft violet to bright, fiery gold. "My body holds more than strength," she said. "It holds programming, locked power. They designed us to fight wars no one remembers. But they feared us too. So they buried the true code, deep in our blood. Only extreme danger wakes it." Jackson swallowed. "And this is extreme enough?" She nodded. "I feel the old fire inside me. But I don't know what it will do." Jackson stepped closer. "Then we use it when it counts." Just then a deep vibration shook the ship. Thud, thud. They both turned toward the sound. "They're here," Arvina said. The hull camera blinked to life, showing a dark gray ship floating outside. Sharp edges, glowing engines, black as a hunter's blade. From its side, a docking clamp extended and latched onto Jackson's freighter. Arvina stood completely still. "That design, it's not just lab forges, that's a reclaimer-class slave retrieval ship, fast, silent, cruel." Jackson loaded his plasma pistol. "Then let's make them regret coming." Arvina turned toward the hallway. "They will come for me first. They always do." He followed her down the corridor. "You said something about locked programming. Can you control it?" She didn't answer right away. Then softly she said, "No." Jackson paused. "Then what happens if you lose control?" She looked him in the eyes. "Then you run, and never look back." Before he could reply, the ship's cargo bay doors hissed open with a blast of smoke. 3 armored figures entered, tall, faceless, dressed in black metal suits with glowing, red visors. Their leader held a stun rod and a chained collar. "Asset 47A, he barked. "You are property of the lab forges. Comply." Arvina didn't move. The collar dropped to the floor with a metallic clang. The leader stepped forward. "Return to your programming." Something inside her snapped. She let out a low breath. Her skin shimmered with light. The air grew heavier around her. Her voice came out no longer soft. It was sharp, strong, cold. "I am not yours." In a flash, she leapt forward. Faster than a human eye could follow, she struck the first guard's helmet, shattering it with a punch that echoed through the bay. Sparks exploded as metal bent like paper. The second guard raised a blaster, but she spun, dodged, and kicked him into the wall so hard the ship shook. Jackson backed away, stunned. She's not fighting. She's unleashing. The leader tried to use the stun rod, but Arvina caught his wrist. Her hand glowed and energy pulsed from her fingers into the man's suit. Circuits fried, the armor cracked, he screamed and dropped. It was over in seconds. She stood above the fallen bodies, her eyes still burning gold. Her hands trembled not from fear but from something else. Power. Jackson stepped forward slowly. "Arvina." She turned toward him. Her face was fierce, but her eyes showed something else. Pain. "They used me to destroy," she whispered. "And that part of me still lives." He came closer. "But you chose to protect. That part is you, not them." Her breathing slowed. The golden light in her eyes faded, returning to soft violet. She dropped to her knees. "I thought that part of me was gone," she said. But it waited in silence, ready to obey. I don't want to be a weapon, Jackson. He knelt beside her. You're not. You're someone who was never given a choice, but you made one today. In the silence, the ship lights flickered and Jackson looked around. If one ship found us, more will come. Arvina looked at her glowing hands. Then we run now. And prepare. Jackson nodded. No more cages. No more collars. Together, they stood. Her body held the strength of 100 soldiers. But now, for the first time, it was hers. The bounty arrives. The ship drifted silently in space. Engines cold, lights dimmed. Jackson had set the freighter into ghost mode to hide. From tracking signals, the enemy ship was gone, for now. But Arvina sat by the window, wide awake. She didn't trust silence. Jackson stood in the engine bay, fixing a melted circuit board with shaky hands. He kept thinking about what he had seen. Arvina moving faster than his eyes could follow, destroying trained bounty hunters like they were made of paper. She was beautiful, terrifying, sad. He couldn't decide which one she truly was. Jackson, her voice called softly from behind. He turned. She looked tired, her silver, hair brushed and clean now, but her eyes still held the storm. You said the lab forges won't stop, he said. But what if they send someone worse? They will, she replied, and he's already close. Before Jackson could ask more, a new sound vibrated through the freighter. Not like before. Not a docking clamp. This one was sharper, controlled. Click, click, click. Then silence. Jackson grabbed his weapon and ran to the hallway. There, standing by the open door, was a tall figure dressed in dark bronze armor, cloak hanging behind him. His skin was pale gray and strange tattoos ran down his neck. His eyes glowed yellow, and he held no weapon. He didn't need one. Arvina whispered, It's him, Corin Drek, the Lab Forge's personal bounty lord. He hunts runaways. Jackson aimed his pistol. Get out of my ship. Corin smiled, slow and calm. So protective. Humans always fall in love with their toys. She's not a toy, Jackson growled. She's not yours either, Corin said. She belongs to the contract. She belongs to the project. No, Arvina stepped forward, voice cold. I belong to no one now. Corin tilted his head. But you were built to obey, and I am the final command. Come now, let's go home. I don't have a home, she said. Then I'll make you remember, he whispered. He moved fast, too fast. Before Jackson could pull the trigger, Corin pressed a device on his wrist, and Arvina screamed, her body locked up, knees crashing. To the floor, her arms trembled. Lights flickered under her skin. Her voice turned raw, full of pain. What's happening? Jackson yelled. A failsafe, Corin said smoothly. They put a leash deep in her blood. No cage needed, just a signal, and she bows. Jackson fired. The plasma blast hit Corin's shoulder, but the armor absorbed it. The bounty hunter didn't even flinch. He moved toward Jackson and backhanded him across the room. Jackson crashed into the wall, vision spinning. Arvina cried out, body still shaking, crawling toward Corin now. Not by will, but by command. Jackson, bloody and dazed, reached into the wall panel and ripped out the emergency disruptor chip. Come on, he groaned. The moment he slammed the disruptor into the control board, a pulse echoed through the ship, and the signal broke. Arvina gasped, then roared. She stood up. Her glowing veins lit up brighter than ever. Her skin shimmered, and her muscles flexed with power no one had seen before. Corin took a step back. Impossible. She raised her hand and crushed the signal device floating on his wrist from across the room, using nothing but force. You tried to own me, she said darkly. But you forgot. I was made to kill you. She dashed toward him. Their fight was fast and brutal. Fists struck armor. Metal bent. Sparks flew. Jackson, still on the floor, watched in awe as Arvina kicked Corin through the air and into the corridor wall. She didn't stop. She was a blur of fire and rage. But Corin fought back. He stabbed her shoulder, cutting deep, and slammed her against a pipe. She coughed, then laughed. "You're weaker than I remember," she said. With one final scream, she wrapped her arm around his neck, lifted him, and slammed him to the floor, so hard the ship shook. Then silence. Blood from her wound dripped onto the floor. She stood over the broken bounty hunter, and she didn't look like a weapon. She looked like a woman who had taken back her life. Jackson got to his feet, limping, bleeding, but still alive. He looked at her. "You okay?" he asked. She turned, breathing hard, eyes glowing faint but steady. "I am. Now." Jackson chuckled weakly. "Remind me not to make you angry." She smiled. That was the first time he had seen her do that. But, deep in the corner of the ship, Corin's wrist buzzed once more. Before he passed out, he whispered one final word. "Backup." A deal of blood and freedom. The ship was quiet again, but not calm. Jackson and Arvina sat in the medbay. He was stitching a wound on her shoulder. Her skin healed fast, but the deep cut from Karan's blade had gone too far. Neither of them spoke much. The silence wasn't from fear. It was from the weight of what was coming. Corin Drek was alive, but broken, locked in the ship's brig. He had whispered backup before passing out. That meant more bounty hunters, or worse. "Don't think we can run again," Jackson said, finally breaking the silence. Arvina looked down at her blood-stained hands. "They won't stop. Even if we leave the system. Even if we disappear." Jackson nodded. "Then we don't disappear. We find help." Arvina looked at him. "You mean other humans?" "Not just any humans," Jackson said. "There's a place, hidden. A colony not registered by the Galactic Core. Some call it Free Point. No laws, no questions. But maybe protection." Arvina raised an eyebrow. "Or a new cage." "Maybe," Jackson agreed. "But it's better than waiting here to be hunted." 3 days later, their freighter arrived at Free Point Station. It floated near a dying moon, surrounded by clouds of dust and drifting ships. It didn't look safe, but Jackson had been here once before. A grumpy customs officer scanned them in. "State your purpose." "Looking for fuel, and maybe a future," Jackson replied. The officer rolled his eyes. "You're in the wrong place for dreams." But Arvina was already watching everything. Her glowing eyes studied every weapon, every guard, every escape path. She didn't trust this place. Not yet. They walked into the main hub, full of ex-soldiers, smugglers, and exiled scientists. It was a wild market of parts, weapons, and strange tech. Jackson led her to a steel door guarded by 2 large men. A voice came through the speaker. "Password?" Jackson leaned forward. "Tell Corsa the man who fixed her gravity boots is back." A moment passed. Then the door slid open. Inside sat Corsa Ven, a former military tactician turned colony leader. She had one cybernetic arm, short, gray hair and eyes sharper than glass. She looked at Arvina and raised an eyebrow. "Well," she said, "that's not a gravity boot." Jackson explained everything. How he found Arvina, what the lab forges had done, and how bounty hunters had already attacked them. Corsa listened without interrupting. Then she stood, walked to Arvina, and said, "You were built to kill, weren't you?" Arvina didn't flinch. "Yes." "And what do you want now?" Arvina answered softly. "Freedom. A life. A name not whispered in fear." Corsa nodded. "That costs blood, girl. And more than most can pay." "I've already paid with blood," Arvina said. "Now I want to pay with purpose." Jackson stepped in. "We're not here to cause problems, just to stay out of cages." Corsa studied them both, then smiled. "I'll give you a deal," she said. "You stay. You help us protect this place from outsiders. In return, we defend you. Lab forges won't get through our walls." Arvina narrowed her eyes. "And what if you change your mind?" Corsa grinned. Then you can tear me in half. It wasn't a perfect deal, but it was the first offer made without chains. Later that night, Arvina stood outside the ship, looking at the stars. Jackson joined her. "You thinking about saying no?" he asked. She didn't reply for a while, then said, "I was bred for orders. Now people ask me what I want. I don't know how to answer." Jackson placed a hand on her shoulder. "You just did. You stayed." She looked at him. "You're different from other humans," he shrugged. "Maybe. Or maybe you just met the wrong ones first." She turned to him slowly. "Jackson, would you still protect me if I had nothing to offer? No strength? No healing? No power?" He didn't hesitate. "Yes." Her eyes softened. No one had ever said that to her. Suddenly, a sharp alarm sounded. In the distance, Corsa's voice rang out from the speakers. "All fighters to the perimeter. Lab Forge's scouts spotted near orbit." Arvina didn't wait. She walked toward the armory, her body glowing faintly. Jackson followed. "We fight?" he asked. She looked back at him with a strange mix of calm and fire. "No," she said. "We protect." The firstborn A year passed. The stars still burned cold in the sky, but inside Freepoint Colony something warm had taken root. Arvina stood near a wide viewing window, her hands gently resting on her growing stomach. Her silver hair now flowed neatly down her back. The glow in her eyes was softer, no longer a sign of danger, but of life. She was no longer a weapon. She was a mother. Behind her, Jackson entered quietly, holding a warm blanket. "You should rest," she smiled at him. "I rest more than you. Do now." He chuckled. "That's only because Corsa makes me check every system twice." He walked over and gently wrapped the blanket around her shoulders. Then he knelt down and touched her belly. "You think it's a boy or a girl?" he asked. "I don't know," Arvina replied. "My kind never had children like this. We were made, not born. But this one," Jackson said softly, "was wanted." Arvina placed her hand over his. "This child is not just part of me, it's part of you. And part of something new." Outside the colony walls, the planet was wild and untamed. But inside, the people of Freepoint had learned to trust her. Not because of her strength, but because she chose to protect them. She had become more than the sum of her design. She had become family. The child came early. The alarm rang through the night, not from danger, but from birth. Jackson rushed to the medical wing. He held Arvina's hand as she lay on the bed, breathing hard but calm. Her body handled pain differently. She didn't scream, but her eyes told the story. "You're doing great," Jackson whispered. "I'm scared," she whispered back. "You fought bounty hunters and broke armored men in half," he said. "You've got this." She gave him a weak smile. "This fight is different." Hours passed, and then a cry, not a scream of war, not the sound of rage, a baby's cry, tiny, loud, alive. Corsa herself helped lift the small child into Arvina's arms. "You've got yourself a strong one," she said. The child had soft violet eyes and warm human skin with faint silver patterns down the arms, signs of both worlds, both legacies. "A girl," Jackson said in awe. Arvina stared at her daughter, silent tears falling down her cheeks. "She's real." "You made her real," Jackson said. "They named her Seelan, but peace never lasted long." 5 days later, a rogue signal broke through Freepoint's shield array. Jackson and Corsa studied it in the control room. "It's them," Corsa said darkly. "Lab Forges. They've sent a beacon to claim your daughter." "My daughter is not theirs," Jackson said. "They've never seen a natural birth like this before," Corsa warned. "To them, she's the first true prototype, born of freedom, not of steel." Jackson clenched his fists. "Then we hold the line." Corsa nodded. "We'll move the civilians to the underground hangar. You and Arvina stay hidden." But Arvina had already walked into the room holding her child. "We don't run," she said. Arvina, Jackson began. She's mine, she said firmly, and they will not take her. Not while I breathe. As darkness fell, the lab forges came. Sleek black ships landed near the outer rim of Freepoint. Their soldiers poured out, dozens of them, each one trained, armed, and ready to capture the firstborn asset. But what they found was something else entirely. Arvina, dressed in a simple cloak, stood at the front gate, child strapped safely to her back. Beside her, Jackson, with a rifle in hand. Behind them, Freepoint citizens, smugglers, ex-soldiers, mechanics, farmers, all ready. Corsa gave the order. Stand your ground. The enemy commander stepped forward, helmet shining under the night lights. Return the child. This is your only warning. Arvina's voice cut through the cold air. You built me to follow orders, but my daughter was born free. If you want her, she said, eyes burning gold again, you'll have to bury me first. And then, she charged. The battle was fierce. Blasters lit the sky. The earth trembled. But something was different this time. Arvina didn't fight alone. She moved with purpose, not rage. Jackson fought at her side, protecting her back. Corsa's people gave everything. And in the heart of the fight, cradled in a woven sling, Seelan never cried once. Like she knew her mother would never let the world touch her. When the dust settled, the lab forges were gone, not defeated by weapons alone, but by something stronger. Family. A new legacy begins. Morning came slowly to Freepoint. The sky above the wild colony was soft and gold, and the ground was still stained with the ashes of battle. But the air felt different now, not tense, not hunted. It felt like something had been broken, something dark. Jackson stood at the edge of the hill, watching the sun rise over the quiet horizon. His clothes were torn. His arm was wrapped in bandages. His eyes looked tired but peaceful. Beside him stood Arvina. She held their daughter close to her chest. Tiny Seelan, wrapped in a light cloth, was finally asleep. Do you think they're gone for good? Jackson asked. No, Arvina said softly. But they know now. I'm not their creation anymore. She looked down at the child in her arms, and she never was. Behind them, Freepoint was waking up. People gathered in the main square, rebuilding walls, helping the wounded, sharing food. Soldiers nodded to each other with quiet pride. No one had expected to survive the night, and yet, here they were. Alive. Safe. Together. Later that day, Corsa stood before the gathered crowd. Her cybernetic arm sparked a little as she raised it. I've been a fighter all my life, she said, her voice steady. But last night, I saw something different. I saw what strength really is. She looked at Arvina. Not fists, not guns, but love, loyalty, the will to protect. Everyone turned to look at the tall alien woman holding a child. Arvina didn't speak. She didn't need to. Her presence spoke for itself. Corsa stepped down from the stage and walked up to her. This colony is yours too now, she said. You've earned that right. Jackson smiled. We're not going anywhere. Good, Corsa replied. Because we need people like you, the kind who don't run, even when they should. That night, as the stars returned to the sky, Arvina sat in the small room they now called home. Seelan lay in a soft cradle nearby, eyes wide open, staring at the glowing ceiling light. Jackson walked in with a small wooden box. What's that? She asked. He opened it and pulled out a thin necklace, simple, with a small silver circle on the end. It was my mother's, he said. She gave it to me when I left Earth. Said it was a symbol of beginnings. He walked over and placed it gently in Arvina's hand. Now it belongs to our beginning, he said. She looked at it, touched it to her forehead, then placed it on their daughter, a small, perfect moment. But even as peace settled, Arvina knew the galaxy outside still burned. The lab forges wouldn't forget. There were others like her, caged, hunted, waiting for help that never came. And now, she had a choice: to stay in safety, or rise and bring hope to those still in chains. A month later, Corsa stood with Arvina beside a new ship, rebuilt, reinforced, and faster than ever. "I can't talk you out of it, can I?" Corsa asked. "No," Arvina replied. "You're taking Jackson and the kid too? They are my purpose. I don't fight without them." Corsa grinned. "Then go light a fire out there, make them remember what they created." Arvina turned to Jackson, who held Seelan against his chest. "Are you ready?" she asked. Jackson smiled. "I wasn't ready for any of this, but I wouldn't trade it for the stars." They boarded the ship. As the engines roared to life, the people of Freepoint watched in silence. Not as the ship of a weapon, not as the ship of fugitives, but as the ship of a family, and the start of a legacy. Across the stars, whispers began to spread, of a woman with silver hair and golden eyes, of a man who chose love over fear, of a child born from freedom, untouched by the chains of war, and of a name once feared. Now, carried with pride, Arvina. No longer a product, no longer a prisoner. She had become something stronger, a protector, a mother, a legend.